But yeah, he completely shut down. I don't think he wanted to. I mean, I don't know what to speak, but really accept it or how to deal with that grief at such a young age. But
Okay, do counsel acknowledge the presence of the jury?
Yes, Judge.
Yes, Your Honor.
We do.
So, Mr. Watson, are you ready to proceed?
I am, Your Honor.
Oh, and thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We do really appreciate how prompt you are. It's very helpful for us. Go ahead, Mr. Watson.
Good morning, Dr. Kelly.
good morning.
My name is Tyler Watson. I represent Marvin Collins in this matter. Do you know who Marvin Collins is?
I don't.
Okay. It's Zaon Collins's father. Were you aware that he was involved in this case?
Oh, I think I vaguely knew that.
Okay. Well, based on your response to that question, I think I know how you're going to answer my next question. Have you formed any opinions in your retention in this case as it relates to my client, Marvin Collins?
No.
Okay. You have no opinions on Marvin's involvement or lack involvement in the collision, correct?
Correct.
Also fair to say that you never reviewed the deposition transcript from Marvin Collins?
That's true.
Okay. Let's talk about some other documents that you may or may not have reviewed in preparation of your opinions. Did you review plaintiff's accident reconstructionist expert Sam Terry's reports?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Did you listen to Mr. Terry's trial testimony from Friday?
No.
Did you review the black box data from either of the two vehicles involved in this collision?
I want to say yes for Mr. Collins, Zaon Collins vehicle. I want to say that that's where I got the figure 88 miles per hour.
Okay. But as far as integrating that into your opinions and putting it in your report, that didn't happen, correct?
I can't remember what I said. That he was speeding, something to that effect.
Right, but as far as the black box data breaking down what was happening with each vehicle in the 5 seconds before the collision, that's not a part of your analysis, correct?
Yes, it is. But I may not have highlighted that.
There's somewhere in your report that talks about what's happening?
I don't think so. I think I mentioned earlier in my testimony 2 seconds prior to the impact, something to that effect. So I did look at that crash data recorder information.
Okay, well, let me put a finer point on it. Is there any analysis in your report as it relates to reaction times?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay. So for instance, if I were to use the phrase T minus, do you know what that means in an accident reconstruction?
I think so, yes.
Okay, like so however many seconds before the
Correct.
collision. So T minus 5 would be 5 seconds before the crash.
Yes.
Okay. So if I were to ask you, at T minus, what time did Mr. Echevarria start his turn? That's not information that you have, correct?
That's true.
Okay. Same with, if I were to ask you, T minus, what time did Mr. Collins start to make an evasive maneuver with his vehicle? You don't have that information, do you?
Don't think that was in there, no.
Okay. What about at T minus, what time Mr. Collins applied the brakes to his vehicle? Do you have that information in your report?
I have an understanding of, not in the report, no.
Okay.
But I have an understanding of that.
Okay, and what's your understanding?
That he braked very late in the game, basically not before the two second T minus 2 interval.
Okay,
And that might be wrong. I mean, I'm not an accident reconstructionist, so.
fair. Do you know the gap in time between when Mr. Echevarria began to turn his vehicle onto the oncoming traffic relative to when Mr. Collins applied the brakes? Do you know that length of time?
We don't.
Okay. So without that information, is it correct to say that you cannot determine whether Zaon's reaction time was slower than expected?
Well, I had an opinion on that I just expressed a moment ago.
No, and I understand that, but I'm asking about actual hard timing. Like, if you don't know how long it took from the turn to start to the application of brakes, you can't say that whether that length of time was more or less or exactly average of a reaction time. Is that correct?
In the sense that I didn't analyze Mr. Echevarria's driving it, other than I knew he turned, but
you know, what I analyzed instead was the crash data recorder information, which indicates when the, you know, when the brake is applied, that sort of thing.
Right.
What the speed is. So strictly the information I got from Mr. Collins' vehicle rather than from Mr. Echevarria's vehicle.
And that's pretty much what I'm trying to get at, which is your analysis doesn't have when Mr. Echevarria's vehicle begins to go into the roadway, so you can't analyze Zaon's personal reaction time to that. Fair?
I mean, I might word it differently, but yeah, I think so.
When I say things in an articulate manner from time to time, so I appreciate that. But as far as actually knowing the gap in time between the turn beginning and the brakes being applied, you don't have that information.
I don't.
Similarly, you do not have any opinions on how much faster you'd expect Zaon to react if he did not have any THC in his system, correct?
I have a general opinion. Again, I'm not an accident reconstructionist, but I do have the general opinion if you're unimpaired and you're driving the speed limit, that helps. Then you can avoid these kind of crashes. That's a very general opinion.
Sure, regarding the speed limit, I appreciate that. But as far as the actual facts of this case, you don't have the ability to say how much faster you would have expected Zaon to react had there not been any THC in his system. That's not an opinion you prepared, correct?
That's fair.
Okay. Do you have any general understanding of how fast a driver is supposed to react to a roadway obstruction?
I do.
What's that?
1.5 seconds on the average.
Okay. And so in the event that there was a 0.7 second gap between the vehicle entering the roadway and the brakes being applied, that'd be within normal reaction time, correct?
True.
Okay. All right, just a couple more questions for you. You charge $300 per hour for your services in this case, true?
Yes.
And how many hours have you billed prior to today on this case?
I don't know the number of hours, but I can tell you what the dollar figure was.
Okay, what was that?
Something like $3,200.
Okay. And then there's also a $2,000 charge for
I
coming in and
included that.
testifying today?
I included that. Oh,
Oh.
for today, yeah, yeah, that's
Okay.
true.
All right, so a total of little in excess of $5,000?
Correct. That'd be the ballpark.
No further questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Kelly, just have a few follow-ups and we'll get you out of here. There was some, actually, could you turn to Exhibit 35, page 005? It's one of the documents that Ms. Zinna had you pull up early in her cross-examination.
Got it.
And what would you describe this document as in terms of its title or purpose?
Well, it's entitled Standardized Field Sobriety Tests Record. So it includes the results of those tests, but it also includes other observations that may have been made regarding the individual.
Fair to say this is intended to document the results of field sobriety tests performed by Metro officers?
Yes.
All right. And would you agree with me that this test documents this document memorializes the test performed of Mr. Collins while he was at UMC Hospital?
Yes, I believe so.
Did you review a field sobriety test record or documentation like you have in front of you there for any field sobriety tests that were performed of Mr. Collins at the scene of the crash?
No.
And were you aware that no such document exists? They were not recorded in that same manner?
That was my understanding.
And this field sobriety test, as documented in the page in front of you, was performed by Officer Powell, is that right?
That's my recollection, yes.
And it looks like it was performed at about 4:15 PM, so about just under an hour after the crash, is that right?
Right,
And would you agree that Dr. Powell checked yes for bloodshot eyes, watery eyes, and eyelid tremors?
yes,
And it actually notes that according to Zaon Collins, he told officers the last time he used marijuana was Saturday, meaning 4 days before the crash.
right,
And at the very bottom of the page, it again notes eyelid tremors and also notes the lack of convergence in the right eye. Do you see what I'm referring to?
yes.
And beneath that, do you see where it notes again that these tests were performed by by Officer Powell?
I don't see that.
It might be above that. I don't have it in front of me.
I think it's on the next page, isn't it? Or might be on this page too. Oh, I see it. It's up at the top.
I stand corrected. It does say Officer Powell performed it up at the top, but do you see at the very bottom of the page, it notes a second officer. Do you see what I'm referring to? It says,
Yes,
and it indicates that the findings were not just found by Officer Powell, but confirmed by Officer Escartin, Escartin.
yes,
Okay, is it your understanding that these findings were found and agreed upon by two separate Metro officers?
I see that.
Now, you were played a video showing some officer interaction at the scene at the very beginning of Ms. Zinna's cross-examination of you. Do you recall that?
Yes,
And it sounded like you wanted to say something. You said, can I add a comment or can I respond to that? But you guys proceeded elsewhere. Was there something that you wanted to say in response to that video?
I think I was going to mention that that wasn't a full-fledged field sobriety test. And I also wanted to make the statement in the case that they never did the full panel. And I think I said that on cross-examination.
The full panel, meaning
Meaning all three of those tests, the eye test and the two balance tests.
yeah, if I was to tell you that any version of field sobriety test that was performed with Mr. Collins at the scene of the crash, if it took less than 60 seconds to perform that test, is it fair to say that that was not a full field sobriety test?
Absolutely.
And that's because Mr. Collins was being evaluated medically. He was on a gurney.
Right, and he had injuries, I believe.
Now, along those same lines, you were asked some questions about the field sobriety testing that was performed of Mr. Collins at the hospital by Officer Powell. And it was noted, and you agreed because the document states as much, that there were no findings of loss of balance or no coordination issues. Do you recall being asked about that?
Yes,
And would you agree with me that that report also states that those types of tests, which are typically part of field sobriety testing, could not be performed because Mr. Collins was being evaluated medically on a gurney?
yes.
Okay. Now, you were asked about Ms. Van Aken's testimony to the grand jury. If you need to look at it again, it's on page 174 of that same exhibit. Lines 12 through 17. It's your page 174.
Got it.
Okay. And do you recall being asked about this?
I do.
And I believe you disagreed with Ms. Van Aken's statement here in substance.
Correct.
Would you agree with me that when Ms. Van Aken is saying that there's the THC level is not going to lend any insight, I'm paraphrasing, I don't have it in front of me, is not going to lend any insight to recency of use. she was not looking at or considering right there the marijuana metabolite?
Um, I feel that she wasn't relating to the models that I mentioned earlier, which requires both the THC and the metabolite.
And you
I don't know if she's unfamiliar with those or what, but
but you said that those two compounds in conjunction are what lend direct insight into recency of use based on the accepted models that you mentioned, correct?
yes,
And would you agree that in Ms. Van Aken's response there that was quoted, she does not refer to the marijuana metabolite?
that seems to be the case.
Now, you were asked about the NTSA paper, and you established that that was not their own independent study. That was a compilation of various studies from all sorts of agencies and published bodies. The national,
All sorts of experts,
okay, all right, you said it better than me.
lots of universities and perhaps a few other agencies as well.
And counsel asked you to confirm what's stated in that paper, which is that it can be difficult to relate THC blood test results alone with impairment. Is that right?
Correct,
And your response was you agree, and that's why you didn't do that here.
correct.
Can you explain what you mean by that?
I didn't do it. The correlation is between time of use and the time of an incident as opposed to blood THC itself. And I explained why that is. Basically, THC leaves the blood. So its concentration in blood can be low, but its concentration at its site of action in the brain can be high. And in fact, I'm aware of a postmortem study where they looked at blood versus brain levels, and the brain levels were always higher. These were people who died in accidents.
You walked us through how you reached your opinions on impairment in this case, but you agree that it can be difficult to relate THC levels with impairment, just those two items standing alone, correct?
True.
But you didn't do that here.
I didn't do it.
You were asked about the Swiss study cited in your report that there were 440 drivers suspected of drug impaired driving, and counsel mentioned that that this study contemplated persons who were under the influence of all sorts of drugs. Is that right?
I wound up, applying to a lot of other drugs besides just THC. But that was the most common one. Marijuana was the most common one.
About 60% of the
Other
drivers.
than alcohol, of course. They didn't include alcohol in that study. That's the most common thing that you find, but the second most common thing is marijuana.
About 60%
components.
of those 440 drivers were under the influence of or tested positive for THC.
That's my recollection.
And the Australian study that you cited, where they found that it's 2.7 times more likely for someone with THC in their system to be culpable for a motor vehicle accident as compared to someone without THC in their system. That study was very specific to THC and not to all drugs across the board. Would you agree?
True.
Almost done with you, Dr. Kelly. You didn't specifically comment on reaction times relative to the crash data in this case, as you agreed with counsel on the last cross-examination, correct?
Correct.
But you did explain the various manners in which marijuana is likely to impair one's ability to drive safely. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And that's what you talked about. Correct me if I'm wrong, cognition, rational thought, decision-making, control of motor movement.
Correct.
If more likely than not is somewhere around here and beyond a reasonable doubt is up here, are you saying, Dr. Kelly, that your opinions regarding Mr. Collins' impairment at the time of the crash is somewhere between here and here? It's just not all the way to this high level of beyond a reasonable doubt?
Yes.
But in your opinion, whether Mr. Collins was over the legal limit for THC and the marijuana metabolite, I believe you said that's not an opinion, that's a fact. Is that right?
Correct.
And
Based on accepting the test result as accurate.
And I believe you said that it was 99.8% likelihood of their accuracy, something like that.
I think I said something different,
Well, you said it was a 0.12% chance that
that it was 2 or less, as opposed to 3. They reported 3, but they also reported their uncertainty in the test. And that allowed me to make this, because basically it's a probability calculation, the famous bell-shaped curve. So it was way out on the wings of the curve.
the uncertainty in the test that you just mentioned, that is something that is noted in all toxicology reports to account for what error rate, things like that.
Nowadays it is. We
Okay.
don't use the term error rate anymore.
All right. Now I said a
Call it
0.1%.
uncertainty.
All right.
Analytical uncertainty. In other words, when you make a measurement, there's you can get a range of values. Hopefully it's pretty tight, but you're not going to get exactly the same number every time you do it. And
So
so that's what that uncertainty figure reflects.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. I worded my question poorly. So your opinion was not necessarily that it was a 0.12% chance that the results of 3.0 nanograms per milliliter of THC were inaccurate. What you're saying is that it's a 0.12% chance that those results were actually under the 2.0 legal threshold.
We have a value of 3. We know what the uncertainty was. So the opinion is that that there's a 0.12% chance that the actual level, the real level, if you will, in other words, that the test was that far off to where it was the true level was 2, and they analyzed it and called it 3.
Was there anything else that you wanted to add or state in response to the questions you were given on cross-examination that you didn't get a chance to respond to?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I think the Officer Powell's grand jury testimony was characterized to me as saying that he denied that there was eyelid tremors, but that isn't true. He actually testified that there were eyelid tremors.
And would you agree that's consistent with the document we looked at earlier, which not only notes the presence of eyelid tremors, but has those findings confirmed by another officer who was present there at the hospital?
Correct, along with the LOC, which was confirmed also by the other officer.
Is it still your opinion, Dr. Kelly, that Zaon Collins was more likely than not impaired by marijuana at the time of the subject crash?
Yes.
And is it still your opinion that more likely than not, that impairment would have significantly interfered with his ability to safely operate a motor vehicle?
Yes.
Are all your opinions still offered to a reasonable degree of scientific probability?
Yes, they are.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Just a couple follow-ups. As to as to Officer Powell's observations, I actually pulled that from your report. If you can pull your report back up at 350241. Same exhibit
The
binder.
criminal report.
Yeah, it's at 35-0241.
Got it.
And in that second paragraph, we've gone over a couple of times, you noted that Officer Powell did not observe eyelid tremors. So perhaps that was just a mistake on your part.
Correct.
Okay. But that is, you do state that Officer Powell did not see eyelid tremors.
I did say that, and there's actually 2 places that proved me wrong. Sorry.
That's okay.
Not perfect.
It happens. And you testified earlier that the lack of convergence is not a sign of impairment, but rather that marijuana is in the system, correct?
I didn't say it wasn't a sign of impairment because it's consistent with impairment, obviously. It's a sign of drug influence on somebody's body and hence recent use. It goes along with some of the blood levels and some of the other symptoms.
Lack of convergence in and of itself is not a sign of impairment, correct?
It's something that's coincident with use. And same thing with LOC.
Okay. And I believe Officer Powell testified that a lack of convergence is not a sign that someone is impaired. It's a sign that marijuana is in the system. Do you disagree with his testimony?
No.
Wonderful. Now, we have, the field sobriety test was not completed for a variety of reasons, right?
True.
So lots of elements missing from that field sobriety test.
Yes.
So Zaon was given an incomplete test. And we know that while a lack of convergence was found, we also know that the other signs and symptoms of marijuana impairment were not found, such as tongue coating, problem speaking, red eyes, cracked eyes, and an odor of marijuana. Would you agree?
Objection asked the answer.
Overruled.
Go ahead, Dr. Kelly.
Yeah, the documentation indicates red eyes and bloodshot and watery eyes, I believe.
So again, in Officer Powell's grand jury testimony, if he said that he did not note red eyes, that maybe that's just another error.
Yeah, but not my error this time. Thank God.
Fair enough. And Zaon had just been in a pretty traumatic car accident, correct?
Correct. I would think so. I
Yeah.
wasn't at the scene, but good grief.
There's other causes for people's eyes to be red, such as crying.
Absolutely.
If you turn in that same exhibit to 35-0174. You were asked about Ms. Vanikin's testimony. Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were there.
I'm getting there.
You're fine.
Okay.
And if you look at lines 18 through 21, please,
On page 174.
on page 174, lines 18 through 21.
So that's a question. Oh, question and answer. Okay.
Do you disagree with Ms. Vanikin's testimony that it is possible someone could have 3 nanograms of active THC and not have used for days?
No. And I don't consider it qualified to offer that opinion anyway.
Okay, but you don't disagree with her.
I do disagree with her.
Oh, I
Didn't
thought you just said no.
I thought I said I disagreed with her.
Okay. So you disagree with her. Is that your testimony?
Fundamentally, I don't think she's qualified to offer the opinion, and I'll stay with that.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. No further questions.
No question, Your Honor.
Okay, any additional questions from?
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, are there any questions from any of the jurors? Just go ahead and do it one page, one question per page. Write your juror number on the top left or the top right, and go ahead and fold up and hand it to my marshal, and he'll bring them over to me. Thank you. Oh, you know what? We can just tape it to a full piece, right?
Yeah, it's just,
It's okay.
I'd like to know one question.
Thank you. Just the 3, right? Nobody's working on anymore? Okay. So, I'm gonna go and I believe the order in which you received them. If this is not the order in which you gave them, sorry, this is, the order in which we think we received them. Okay, so, this one says for expert witness. Can you elaborate on more on uncertainties? I have to read exactly as written in test results. How does this affect the test validity or reliability?
So it used to be that we would report just the number that we got with no acknowledgement of what is known as analytical variation. In recent years, the fashion has been, or the basically the best forensic practice involves calculating and reporting uncertainty for every test result that you release. And there's a variety of ways of doing it, but basically it's something called propagation of uncertainty. There's various sources of uncertainty in any testing process. And this testing that we've been talking about, it's a multi-step process. So just to give you one example, if there's a pipetting step, and your pipetting device is accurate within plus minus 1%, then that's a component of the ultimate uncertainty of the test result. So let's say there's two there's two pipetting steps, each of which is accurate to within 1%, then the overall process is not going to be accurate to 1%. It's going to be accurate to 2%. So that's basically what it involves. It involves identifying all sources of possible variation within a test protocol and evaluating what the impact would be on the number. And this uncertainty level that's listed on the report is two standard deviations, or in other words, in terms of the bell-shaped curve. I referred to the bell-shaped curve. Those of you who are mathematically sophisticated probably know I'm talking about a Gaussian curve, which describes a lot of natural phenomena. That bell-shaped curve is symmetrical. The most probable value is right in the center, and 95% of the values are contained within plus minus 2 standard deviations. So in this case, plus minus 0.6 nanograms per mil. So 95% of the results, if you reanalyze this sample, this is what the statistic is telling you, would fall between 2.4 and 3.6 nanograms per mil. Hope that answers.
The next one, can you explain why Zaon did not exhibit visible signs of impairment per police officers on scene tests, despite toxicology reports showing impairment? 2, and is this common?
The commonness varies with the circumstances of the crash, but those officers on scene, and this is my opinion, obviously, I'm not a police practices expert either. I'm a toxicologist, but they have a lot to do. I see them when they investigate an accident. One of the reasons why a sample can't be collected for an hour or two is because of the complexity of duties that they have to perform. So I think it's possible that those officers on the scene made a snap judgment of non-impairment. It is harder to detect impairment by marijuana than it is something like alcohol, for example, because you can smell alcohol. So it requires a little more sophisticated testing to really identify that.
And the next one, did you also perform a toxicology exam on Mr. Echevarria?
No. There may have been one performed. He died. So I assume he became a coroner's case, but I don't think I had access to that data.
Okay, now that's all the questions at this time, right? I'm not seeing any more. Okay. Plaintiffs' counsel, do you have any more questions based on those questions or related to those questions?
No questions, Judge. Thank you.
Okay, defense counsel, do you have any questions based on those questions or related to those questions?
Just one, Your Honor. Marijuana has a fairly strong odor, correct, Dr. Kelly?
The plant, yes,
And somebody smoking marijuana would exhibit.
that
an
has,
odor.
yeah, has a different but also fairly strong odor. So obviously it depends on how tight the space is, how much you can.
Understood. Thank you so much. No further questions.
Mr. Watson?
No questions, Your Honor.
Okay. And, plaintiffs' counsel, any questions based on what defense asked?
Dr. Kelly, are there ways to remove or reduce the smell of marijuana from oneself if desired?
Sure.
And as more time passes, does that task become easier?
Yes.
Particularly if it's north of, let's say, 6.5 hours, something in that range?
Well, yes, for certain.
Nothing further, Judge. Thank you.
Okay, any additional questions from any of the jurors? Oh, wait, actually, sorry, any questions, any more from defense after that?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
Okay, anything else from any of the jurors? Okay, seeing none, I believe we have one witness that's gonna be pretty short, right?
Yes, Judge.
Okay, are you guys okay to keep going for maybe like about 20 to 30 minutes, maybe a little bit longer, and then we break for lunch after that? Okay, so counsel, go ahead and, oh, you may step down, sir. Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Or doctor. Counsel, if you could call your next witness, please.
Judge, plaintiff's called Jason Robledo.
Is he outside?
He should be, Judge. I
Okay.
believe he's been out there for.
I think my marshal's probably on
Thank
the
you.
way to get him. Raise your right hand. My question is right now.
You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this act is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under pain and penalty of perjury. Please state and spell your first and last name for the record.
My name is Jason Robledo, Jason. The last name is Robledo.
Thank you very much. You may be seated. Be sure to pull that microphone real close to you, soft speaker, and make sure that little red button is up. It should still be.
Okay, thank you.
You can adjust the chair too if you need to.
I think it's good.
Good afternoon, Jason.
Good afternoon.
Thanks for waiting patiently out there. I just want to ask you a little bit about your background. Do you live here in Las Vegas?
Yes, I do.
How long have you lived in Vegas?
My entire life. I'm born and raised here.
Your entire life would be how many years?
28 years.
Okay.
Mm.
So you went to high school here?
Yeah, I went to high school here, elementary school, middle school. Yeah.
Where'd you go to high school?
I went to Spring Valley High School,
What year did you graduate?
2015.
And what is your relationship to Anne Marie Echevarria?
Anne Marie is my mom.
As a side note, do you know why she's not here today?
Yes, I do. So she's been really stressed out over Zaon's testimony and people blaming Eric for the accident. She hasn't.
All right, Jason. Are you employed?
Yes.
What line of work are you in?
I'm a vet assistant. I also work with like dog walking, and I train at a boarding facility as well.
Okay, so you like dogs, it sounds like.
Yeah, dogs and cats are, yeah, I really love working with animals.
All right, and what do you do as a vet assistant?
So I've worked in like different capacities over the last 5 or 6 years, like ICU, overnight, like urgent care. So just daily assisting the veterinarians, drawing blood, doing x-rays, taking care of patients with, their fluid pumps, medications, things like that.
Married?
No, not currently.
Have kids?
Yes, I have 3 kids, and I've been with their mom for the last 8 years.
What are you waiting for, man?
I was like we're informally engaged. We're working on it now, finding places and stuff.
Do you have any siblings?
Yes, I have 3 siblings.
Okay. Why don't you give us their names from oldest to youngest, and you can skip yourself and you can skip Eric Jr., who we already know about.
Okay. So oldest is my brother Moses, and then my brother Joseph, and then my sister Ashley.
So you are the youngest, with, I guess, Eric Jr. being younger than you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Excuse me, correct.
You're good. Sorry, how old are your kids?
6, 5, and 2.
All right. So Eric Echevarria Sr., he was your stepdad. Is that fair to assume?
Yeah, so it was more than that to me, but yeah, he's my stepdad.
I'll try to just call him Eric Sr. to distinguish him from Eric Jr., but
Okay.
If you're not sure about who I'm asking about, just let me know. Can you tell us about your earliest memory of Eric Sr.?
Yeah, so he worked as a custodian at my elementary school, and he was just very personable. So I think I was like 7 or 8 years old. He'd come through, talk to the kids, make sure we're picking up our trash and things like that. Specifically, I'd gone into the bathroom, and some kids had like damaged the bathroom, flooding or throwing like the wet paper towels on the walls. Excuse me. And as I was exiting, Eric was going in, and then he asked me kindly, like, because he saw the bathroom in shambles, and he just asked me, "Oh, was that you?" And I was a panicky little kid, so I was like, started kind of freaking out, like I'm gonna get in trouble for something else. And he just reassured me that he was just asking me, if I knew anything. And then also, my mom would make me lunch every day for school. One day she forgot, and she had called in to the school, and maybe they can get me lunch or get me lunch from the lunchroom. And Eric, without telling her specifically, but he volunteered, and he got me Wendy's, and he made sure I had lunch that day.
And you said you were 7 or 8 when that happened?
Yeah, I was, yeah, 7 or 8.
And was that around the time that your mom and Eric started dating?
Yeah, so at that point they didn't really know each other. My mom worked at a daycare center, so she would come pick us up, the kids, including me, and he worked there, so they would, they would see each other at times. But yeah, a little bit after that is when they started talking. After he got me lunch, and then kind of introduced, she wanted to figure out who it was, and they kind of, yeah, from there started dating.
And then eventually, did Eric Senior move in with you and your mom and your siblings?
Yeah, yeah, eventually. But he was still like, always over, immediately getting me outside, teaching me sports, playing. So he immediately integrated into our life. And yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. What was the experience like for you having Eric move in and with you and your mom and your other siblings? If you can just elaborate a bit more on what you just said.
At that time of my life, it was great. My biological father lived in the city, but he wasn't around or active. So I was looking for that, that kind of fatherly figure, and he took on the role. I mean, immediately teaching me, how to play baseball, how to catch a baseball, how to, catch a football, how you even, my mom wasn't happy about it, but teaching me how to box, and getting me a speed bag, teaching me how to protect myself, kind of giving me that confidence that that I needed at that time from a father figure.
And other than the types of sports you just mentioned, was there anything else that you and Eric would commonly do together when you were growing up?
Yeah, so he started taking me to church as well, and then barbecues with his army buddies, and introducing me as his son. And they were like, because they've known him for his whole life, I'm like, what? Because I was 8, 9 years old, or 7 or 8. So introduced me as his son, and yeah, a lot of times with his friends, like I said, barbecues, just going out meeting his army buddies, and yeah, church get-togethers, things like that.
What did you call Eric Senior growing up?
Dad.
Did he refer to you as his son?
Yes, whenever we introduced, we've met new people, he introduced me as his son.
You mentioned Eric's army buddies. Did he ever talk to you about his service in the military, or just the military in general, anything like that?
Oh yeah, I was really infatuated with the military as a kid, and just like the machinery and everything. So he had pictures of him with tanks and holding guns, and that really intrigued me. And so we talked about the military a lot, and he had medals and stuff. So we kind of just go over things. I was yeah, really interested, and he kind of took the reins on that.
Was Eric involved in your education or your school activities, or did he mostly just leave that to your mom?
Oh no, he was super involved. Since he worked at the school, he was able to easily become like chaperones once my mom and him started dating. So he'd chaperone us in my class into like field trips, the M&M factory, wherever we would go. Anything I needed at school, I mean, with counselors or teachers, he was always active in helping, as much as he could. So he was very active in my life, education, everything.
At some point, Eric Jr. was born, obviously, yeah?
Yes.
And how old were you when Eric Jr. was born?
I was about 10 or 11.
Once Eric Jr. was born, did your relationship with Eric Sr. change at all now that he had a kid of his own?
No, not at all. He made me part of the whole experience. He let me choose little Eric's middle name,
Which is what?
Jason. I know I was very creative. But no, he did, like I said, I understood that a baby would create less time for going out, but he still made time for me, activities. He didn't treat me any differently when little Eric was born.
You mentioned Eric Sr. being this father figure you didn't really have before. Did you still see your biological dad on occasion growing up?
So occasionally, maximum 1 to 2 weekends a month, and there was big gaps of months where I wouldn't see him. So a majority of my childhood has been spent with Eric and my mom.
Did Eric ever speak negatively of your biological dad?
No, he didn't. Even at times when, my biological dad would do things that would hurt my mom or hurt us. And even with my mom being upset, he never disrespected or talked badly or poorly about my dad. He always encouraged me to love my dad, that he's still my dad. And I didn't really fully understand that, or, fully respect that mentality until I got older and started having kids and having my own life experiences. It takes, like, to me, I think it takes a very special man to be able to do that.
Were any of your kids born yet, Jason, at the time that Eric passed away in December of 2020?
Yeah, both my sons were born. So my son Royal had just turned 2, and my son Benicio was about 10 months. He wasn't even 1 yet.
Tell us about, strike that. Did Eric have any type of relationship with your kids?
Oh my God, yeah, he was super involved with them. I mean, even so, my son Benicio, when we went to the hospital, my wife we're ready. She felt like she was going into labor and contractions. As soon as he found out we were there, he got with his boss to come to the hospital, and he was the first one to hold my son. And I'm sure my mom was like, "What? How did he get there so fast?" But he was the first person to come, bring us food, ask if we needed anything. And then my son Benicio had like some jaundice, so they recommended us stay at the hospital for a couple days. And he watched my older son Royal, and I didn't really trust anybody besides my mom and my dad to watch them. So I was, I really trusted him. He sent me videos all night of them playing, him making them breakfast in the morning, and it was awesome because I got to spend those time with my wife, and it's time of a little bit of uncertainty because we wanted to make sure our son was okay. So him providing that was amazing, and yeah, he was super active in their life.
And you're saying you didn't really trust anyone to watch your other child besides your mom and your dad. You're referring to Eric.
Yeah, I'm referring to Eric, yes.
To your kids, it sounds like Eric was grandpa.
Yeah, Eric was grandpa, 100%.
Where were you, or what were you doing when you heard the news that Eric had passed away?
I was at home making dinner for my kids with my girlfriend.
What do you remember most about that day?
I try not to think about it, too much, but the most remember I saw my mom calling me just in complete like screaming agony. I've seen my mom upset. I was with her. I've seen her angry. I've seen her a lot of things. I've never heard or seen her seen her scream. Like the only thing I can compare it to is if you can imagine someone getting like their hand cut off or something. Just screaming in agony on the phone. It's still, like seared into my brain, telling her to call I should call my siblings. Eric has been in an accident. So just a lot of sadness and grief and just confusion a lot too, because we had small details and things around the news, but just a lot. That's what I remember from just sadness, confusion, my mom and everybody being in like a really distraught state of mind.
What was that like for you hearing that news?
I was devastated. I was confused. I was, it was tragic. Trying to put pieces together to make sense. So it was a tough time.
Fair to say you spent lots of time with both Eric Jr. and with your mom, both before and after Eric Sr. passed away.
Yes.
Can you tell me about anything you've observed in terms of the impact from your perspective that Eric Sr.'s death had on Eric Jr.?
So it's pretty tough. He's old enough to learn how to drive, and he's terrified. The amount of anxiety of making sure, I understand calling people to make sure they get home, but how stressed he gets about everybody making it home because of, what he's been through. So it's rough because those are all the things his dad was supposed to teach him, and he's unable to, so it affects him.
From an emotional standpoint, was Eric Jr. able to talk to you about his feelings? Is that something that
we're trying to get there now. He completely shut down. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Excuse me.
You're okay. I don't mean to.
No, I understand.
I mean, make it hard for you. Well,
but yeah, he completely shut down. I don't think he wanted to. I don't know what to be, but really accept it or how to deal with that grief at such a young age. But yeah, he just shut down mentally, and it was hard for get him to talk about anything.
I know this is hard. The last thing I want to ask you about your mom, knowing your mom the way you do, and from everything you've observed before and after Eric passed away, is your mom the same person she was before Eric Sr. died?
Excuse me.
Take your
time. She tries her best for us and her, her family, but she's always had like this glimmer in her eyes and was so outgoing and never anxious, never scared to take on anything. And just seeing her, down, and she's just not the same person as she was before Eric passed away. She consoled him a lot for a lot of things. And we could only talk to her so much, but that was her partner. So she doesn't really have like that, that person to talk to. So it's been rough seeing her like that. Like I said, she tries her best and she, she does what she has to do, and she's, for family, but she's just not the same as she was, that same outgoing person.
I know it's not easy to talk about. Appreciate you coming here today and doing so. I don't have any further questions. Thank you, Judge.
I'm very sorry. I don't have any questions.
Thank you.
No question. Okay. Do any of the jurors have any questions for this witness? Okay, seeing no one writing, I'm gonna assume no, right? I don't see anybody writing. Okay. Thank you very much for your time, sir. You can go ahead and step down.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay, so at this time, we're gonna take our lunch break. It is now 12:36. Well, I'm gonna give you guys a lunch break. I don't know if we're gonna take a lunch break right away. It is now 12:36. I'm gonna ask you to please come back at 1:45. Give you as close to an hour as I can give you. And then hopefully too, if we need to do anything, we'll be done before then as well. I have to read you the instruction too one more time. You're instructed not to talk with each other with anyone else about any subject or issue connected with this trial. You're not to read, watch, or listen to any report of or commentary on the trial by any person connected with this trial or by any media of information, including without limitation, newspapers, television, internet, or radio. You're not to conduct any research on your own relating to this case, such as consulting dictionaries, using the internet, or using reference materials. You're not to conduct any investigation, test any theory of the case, recreate an aspect of the case, or in any other way investigate or learn about the case on your own. You're not to talk with others, text others, tweet others, Google issues, or conduct any other kind of book or computer research with regard to any issue, party, witness, or attorney involved in this case. You're not to form or express any opinion on any subject connected with this trial until the case is finally submitted to you. Okay, with that being said, you are on a break for lunch until 1:45. All right. Thank you, be seated. Council, I'll start first with plaintiffs. Do you want to make any kind of record before we take our lunch break? Or do you want to talk about anything else?
I don't think so. I think we're on schedule today. I'm not sure how long Dr. Hirschfeld's gonna be.
Is that the only person we have left today?
Echevarria, via Zoom, who was supposed to testify on Friday, but she got bumped out because of time. She'll be probably similar length to Mr. Robledo. I suspect we should be able to fit her in at the end and possibly let the jury out a bit early, depending on how long Dr. Hirschfeld takes.
This is his sister.
Correct.
Her name is Marie and his wife is Anne Marie. Is that correct?
Correct. I think her formal name is Maria, but she goes by
Okay.
Marie, but I could be
Okay,
wrong.
just want to make sure I'm not mixing up people. Okay, and so that's all you have left for today, those
Yes,
two?
Judge.
And then have you discussed potential witnesses for tomorrow with Miss Zinna, or do you know who is on for tomorrow?
We do know, and yes, we have, we anticipate calling Mr. Collins.
Yeah, Marvin Collins?
Correct. I apologize. Yeah, Marvin Collins, Rigo Munoz, and Moses Robledo.
Okay, and I did think that tomorrow we were gonna do either a 10 or 11 o'clock start. Is that still the plan, or do you want to start after lunch?
Those three witnesses, particularly the latter two I mentioned, I think it would be more appropriate to start after lunch. Otherwise, there's a pretty good chance that if we start at 11, we're done at 3 or something kind of awkward like
Okay.
that. I mean, I'll defer to the court and.
So if we start at 1 o'clock, just have all our bases covered, I don't mind letting them leave at 4 o'clock if that's the situation, but I don't want to start at 1 o'clock and have to keep them till 5:30.
Zero chance.
Zero chance. Okay,
I
so
mean,
if we
based on
start
the
at-
witness testimony, Judge, I don't know.
we
about any
start at
other
1
issues.
o'clock, you're fairly certain that we're gonna be out of here we're gonna be able to release them by 4:45.
I am, Judge.
I guess my only question is, are you gonna do your direct to Marvin, after me, or are you gonna wait till your case in chief? And if you do, how long will that take? Just, that's.
I
how-
would imagine that I would have no more than 30 minutes for him.
Tomorrow?
Correct.
Okay.
So if that's the
That's on the outer
situation,
limits.
if that's the situation, does that plan still work with a
It-
1 o'clock start? If not, I mean, we can start at 11 o'clock and we can do an hour, let them go to lunch. And then come back at 1 o'clock or even 1:15 and do stuff that's left, but then we also have to think about, whenever we can, I want to try not to break up witnesses with a lunch.
I don't expect my direct of Mr. Collins, Marvin Collins, to be more than half an hour.
Okay.
So if there's another half hour on Ross, then an hour with him, and how long are the other two witnesses?
The other two witnesses will be very similar in length to what we just experienced with Jason.
Okay, he was like not even half an hour, so that's an hour plus hour and a half. Okay, so 1 o'clock start should be fine then.
Makes sense.
Okay, we'll do 1 o'clock just to be safe. I'll probably tell the jury 1:15. Anything else before I ask defense if they have anything to say before we take our break?
Not for plaintiff, Your Honor.
Defense, any record you want to make, anything you want to say on the record, or any other comments before we take our break?
Not for me, Your Honor.
Briefly, I just want to put on the record that I do object to any lay witness coming in and saying that the plaintiff fell because of stress associated with this case. I think that, one, there's no foundation for it that would require medical testimony to that effect. It's highly prejudicial, and choosing to initiate litigation is stressful. I fully appreciate that, but that's not compensable. And so there's an enormous amount of sympathy that's not actually merited to be considered when coming up with a judgment in this case. So for that reason, I have no problem with anyone mentioning that she fell, but trying to tie it to the stress associated with this case and hearing testimony that's upsetting is improper and unduly prejudicial.
I would join.
Our response, Your Honor, is this is not litigation induced stress. This is distress because of them blaming her husband for his own death. So it's very different. That is a compensable form of damages, something that's been going on all along since they've been denying fault, denying liability from the start of this case. That doesn't require medical expert testimony to talk about how she was distracted because she has so much going in her mind, and that's why she missed the last step. There's no requirement that we have expert testimony on that. So I think that's perfectly fair game.
Okay, well, the information that you're seeking to exclude right now did not come in through this witness, I believe. We stopped it.
Correct.
So it's not a concern right now,
Correct.
but maybe it's something that you need to revisit before she takes the stand, okay? So let's revisit it before she takes a stand. Because I am a little bit concerned about, I mean, I don't know exactly what argument you're gonna make, and I think you're just seeking to exclude anybody coming in here and giving like a layperson's expert opinion, right? About that stress could cause you to have an injury. Are you saying that's?
Correct. And specific to this case, again, litigation stress is not compensable. Litigation by nature is stressful. Defendants have a right to defend themselves. And, while we certainly appreciate what the family's going through, it's not something that should be brought up in this trial.
You wanna say something else?
Just that we disagree. It's not litigation induced stress. It's stress for blaming her husband for his own death. Two completely different things. That does not conflict with their right to defend themselves. They have the right to defend themselves, but if it causes distress with our client for pointing the finger at her husband for causing this crash, when he really shouldn't be pointed the finger at, that's all a part of her emotional distress and damages related to this case, Your Honor.
Are you seeking to exclude her, I'm gonna say her because I'm talking about Anne Marie Echevarria, from being able to say on the stand that it's been stressful for her or upsetting for her to hear people say that the accident was caused or was a result of her husband's behavior?
No, outside of the course of trial, if she's just saying that, no one's taking responsibility or my husband's being blamed for his death and that is upsetting to me, that's fine. But if her position is that it caused her to miss a step, fall, sustain an injury and miss time for being in trial, I strenuously object to that. That is improper.
Are you going to make that argument? We'll revisit this before she takes the stand, because I think she's gonna be the one, because, look, I'm a little bit worried that what you're seeking, well, I'm not worried about it, but I'm not sure if what you're seeking to exclude is what he's seeking to include. And by that, I mean, like, your objection, I don't think it's, as I'm hearing it, might not be objecting to what Mr. Ladah is responding to. And I'm not sure Mr. Ladah intends, and maybe he doesn't even know yet, because this sounds like a new thing. I'm not sure Mr. Ladah is intending to say that she's so stressed out because of her husband getting blamed for this accident that she fell down the stairs. I'm not sure he's intending to say that. And if he's not intending to say that, you don't have a problem, right?
Right, and the reason why I brought it up is because that was the testimony that was starting to be provided when we objected and approached, Your Honor. And I agree with you that it's not an exigent issue, as it
Yeah.
hopefully will not be elicited from any other witnesses other than your client. So as long as none of the other family members are going to come in and provide that same testimony before we get to hers, then yes, we have some.
And as I'm clearly hearing it, no one's objecting to anyone being able to say that part of her pain and suffering has been that her husband's getting blamed for this accident, right?
Yeah, I'm not objecting to that.
Okay. That kind of flushed it out a little bit.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else before we take our lunch break?
No.
Okay, so let's try to be back a couple minutes before them, like maybe 1:40. Okay, if anybody wants to make a record, try to come back even earlier than that and just let whoever's in the courtroom or my marshal know that you do want to make a record and that everybody's gonna be back at whatever time you guys have decided that you're gonna be back in advance.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, Judge.
Thanks. To see, we are outside the presence of the jury. Counsel, you want to make an additional record of some kind?
Just briefly, Your Honor, I do wanna, make sure, I think, the court wanted me to bring this up before I show the pictures of the body. Dr. Hirschfeld is our medical expert. He reviewed these pictures. He also reviewed the coroner's report. Towards the end of his testimony, I'm planning on putting up the pictures of the body, one by one, and have Dr. Hirschfeld explain what we see in the pictures as far as the injuries. It's going to be done relatively quickly. I'm not gonna prolong the process.
And they're amongst the photos that the court went through and that we selected out of the however many recording photos that were available.
Okay. Look, full disclosure, when I was reading this report, is there an allegation that the injuries were not caused by this accident?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, so this is, do you expect your part to be fairly short with this expert?
A minute,
Okay.
maybe two.
Okay, so, appreciate the warning. Trying to think if we should warn the jury.
Yeah, I was gonna do it, if you allow
Yeah.
me to, Your Honor.
Give them a warning, you're gonna show something kind of graphic. Do you have any problem with opposing counsel giving the warning, and you give warning if you're gonna show anything graphic?
I don't have a problem with the warning, I just want to maintain my original objection to the photos for the record, but I understand the court's ruling.
Yeah, it was like, it's only gonna be like the 4 I said come in, right? We're not gonna show like.
That's
however
five,
many.
I
There
believe.
were 5, Judge.
And the first one kind of just is from a distance, so it kind of just sets the scene. And the other ones I'm just gonna go through pretty quickly.
So, we're talking about 812, or what was 812, what was 821, what was 826, what was 858, and there was, if you're gonna show the close-up I-12, I don't know what the number on that one was. 833, right?
Now they are 7-0289 through 7-0293.
Okay, and counsel, you're not waiving your objection to these photographs, but did you look at what he's gonna show and make sure they are the ones that are ruled to come in?
Yes, we did, and we confirmed that they are.
Okay, so then I think we're fine. Anything else, before we get started again?
No, Your Honor.
And I would just ask that the photos, when the questioning is done, that they get pulled off screen, so one's not hanging out there prolonged, but otherwise. no
Okay.
objection.
If you think it's hanging out there too long, just ask for it to be taken down.
Thank
Okay,
you.
otherwise I'm gonna do my best not to interrupt. Anything else?
Judge, the last witness after Dr. Hirschfeld is going to be testifying via Zoom, so we'll need a break regardless, just to make sure we can test the audio and so forth.
Okay, so we'll try to make that our afternoon break then, like another 15 or 20-minute break then, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else?
No, Your Honor.
Oh, the schedule for tomorrow, did you guys discuss it yet or not?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
We're all lined up, Your Honor.
We're good then, thanks. Let's be seated. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you again for being pops. We're just gonna get right into it. Plaintiffs' counsel, are you ready to call your next witness?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, go ahead.
Dr. Bruce Hirschfeld.
You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this action should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth and pain of penalty of perjury.
I do.
Please state and spell your first and last name for the record.
Bruce, B-R-U-C-E, Hirschfeld, H-I-R-S-C-H-F-E-L-D.
Be sure to, when you sit down, bring that microphone real close to you and that the little red button is up or on.
Thank you.
Sorry, I think the battery went out in my microphone. Switch.
My marshal will come take that one.
Dr. Hirschfeld, what type of physician are you?
I'm a surgeon.
What exactly is your specialty?
I specialize in general and vascular surgery, primarily these days vascular.
What are you currently board certified in?
General surgery and vascular surgery, and I have previously been board certified in critical care surgery.
Can you take us through what critical care surgery is?
Critical care surgery or critical care medicine is the evaluation and treatment of patients who are critically ill, which is defined as a life-threatening problem.
Take us through your qualifications, education, and training, please.
I went to Duke University where I did my undergraduate training. Then I went to Houston, Texas at Baylor College of Medicine, and I completed medical school, internship, residency, and a fellowship in vascular surgery in Houston. I came out here in 1990 and have been practicing here since that date.
You ever worked as an ER physician?
I have.
Can you take us through that, your experience in that?
So primarily it was back when I was at Houston. Ben Taub Hospital was one of the busiest trauma centers in the country, still is. So I had a vast experience of dealing with traumatic injured patients at that time. When I came out here, I took call for the first 20 years of my practice here and was required to take the call and maintain a relationship taking care of emergency patients, including traumatically injured patients, up until about 10 years ago.
Give us an idea of the range of trauma patients you treated in your career.
So in Houston, there was a lot of penetrating trauma, knife and gunshot injuries. Also a lot of blunt trauma from falls or from motor vehicle crashes. Those would represent the primary type of injuries that I've dealt with. Here it was the same, although a little less on the penetrating injuries, meaning the gunshots and the stab wounds.
As a trauma physician or ER physician, did you deal with paramedics during your career?
Yes.
Tell us in what capacity.
So the paramedics would bring the patients in, and if I was the principal in the ER, I would always try to meet the paramedics and get the history. It was a valuable insight into what occurred in the field, the initial mechanism of injury, and the initial evaluation of the patient and the injuries, and plus the treatment on the way to the hospital. So I found that a very helpful message to get from the paramedics.
What were you asked to do in this case?
I was asked to review the records that you provided and make a determination regarding cause of death and look at the medical billing as well.
All right, I want to go through these records, have you explain some things for us, if you don't mind, Doctor. Can we pull up 2-003, please, Joe? First of all, Doctor, were there more than one set of paramedics that arrived at the scene?
There were.
If you could blow that out for us, Joe, please, thank you. Can you take us through what's pertinent here? And this is the Clark County Fire Department paramedic report. Can you take us through what's pertinent here in this record?
So the narrative history that's documented indicates a 55-year-oldish male driver in a vehicle that was in a collision with another vehicle, flipped onto its side and forced into a brick wall which broke. On their arrival, the patient was unresponsive to either verbal or painful stimuli, and that comes down to what's known as the Glasgow Coma Scale score. Eye-opening would be the other thing that's taken into account in determining that score. The score was 3, which is the very minimal that one can obtain in this area. it is usually correlated very highly with a severely traumatic brain injury. The mortality rate for GCS 3 patients is between 50 and 80%, and even those that live are typically impaired and have difficulty with general functioning physiologically. There was no radio pulse. What that means is that's the pulse at the wrist here. And typically you have to have a blood pressure between 100 and 120 to get that pulse. The carotid pulse was strong, that's here in the neck. And that pulse, you can have a blood pressure as low as 80 or even lower and still have a carotid pulse. Respirations, the breathing was described as agonal. Agonal breathing is typically a pre-terminal situation, and it's described as irregular breathing that's short, shallow, gasping, and sometimes with gurgling or noises. There had to be an extrication before the paramedics could perform stabilization and further assessment, and that was done by the fire department, after which the patient was reassessed. And it's very typical after a trauma such as this to immobilize the spine. That's done by putting a hard collar on the neck to keep the cervical spine from moving, and the patient on a backboard to stabilize the thoracic and lumbar spine in the back. After that was performed, he was moved to the ambulance, and ALS care stands for life-saving care. SpO2 monitoring is measuring the oxygenation through the skin. We're able to monitor that, and so they could obtain that. So he was at least oxygenating at that time. The patient's skin was noted to be pale, which is consistent with blood loss, and bleeding was noted from the ears, which is typically seen in a significant injury at the base of the skull, which is translated into even further traumatic brain injury. Intubation was initially attempted by this crew and was unsuccessful. They were able to get an IV in the left AC, which is the antecubital fossa, is this area here.
What is intubation? Can you explain that?
Intubation means to establish an airway through the mouth or through the nose into the trachea itself here, and you can give direct respirations, including what's called positive pressure. Means that you force the air into the lungs.
A couple lines above that, it says with findings of contusion to patient's chest and bleeding from patient's ears. Can you explain that?
So contusion is a bruise, a bleeding beneath the skin typically. And the fact that it was in the chest area leads to concern for contusion or bruise to the heart and or lungs. And I think I already explained the bleeding from the ears is consistent with a traumatic head injury.
Doctor, there's a note at the bottom. You see where it says note?
Yes.
You take us through that.
So care was delayed because the patient needed to be extracted from the vehicle. He was stuck due to the vehicle being on its side and into a brick wall. And so it took the fire department some period of time. My understanding was a minimum of 20 minutes to obtain access and get the patient out of the vehicle into the hands of the paramedics.
And where it says patient vehicle has approximately 10 to 20 inches of intrusion, do you see that?
Yes.
What does that mean?
So, so from the right side where the vehicle was struck, the white vehicle, there was a 10 to 20 inch
intrusion of that right side through the pillar of the car, through the seat and into the interior. That is a very significant force of energy that is required to move the steel and metal 10 to 20 inches into the vehicle.
And it says there at the end of that sentence, patient was restrained driver. What does patient was restrained driver mean?
He was wearing a seatbelt.
He was wearing a seatbelt.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Doctor, just briefly, the treatment by Clark County Fire Department, was that treatment necessary as a result of this motor vehicle collision?
Yes, it was.
Okay. I want to go to the AMR report real quick now. Can we go to 1-002, please? And can you pull up the narrative for us? Can you just take us through what's important in this narrative? I know there's a lot there, but just pick through the important stuff if you don't mind, please.
So the mechanism of injury is described in the first paragraph, T-bone at a very high speed. We discussed the intrusion of the passenger side into the cabin and through the brick wall. So there was a double impact is what that means. Initially, the two cars collided, and then there was a second impact on the collision into the brick wall. We've gone through this. The car was initially upside down, and the extrication had to occur by the fire department. Immobilization of the spine was documented again, and it was noted that Eric was unresponsive here, and he was secured and loaded into the ambulance.
Okay, can we go to the 10?
Also, it's important to note here, a pulse was still obtained at this time. He did have, it doesn't specify where, but some pulse was obtained here.
And was the AMR treatment necessary as a result of this motor vehicle collision?
Yes, it was.
Can we go to 1-003? Is there anything additional on this page, doctor, that you can explain for what happened here?
So this central paragraph here deals primarily with a reassessment wherein Eric lost the pulse. They were no longer able to obtain a pulse, and they needed to do further resuscitation. So CPR, or cardiopulmonary resuscitation, was begun. And it says there that an IO catheter was placed by flight. And the significance of that is IO stands for interosseous. Interosseous is through a bone into the bone marrow. So in order to get that in, a very large bore IV metal is placed as hard as you can through the tibia in the leg into the bone marrow, and fluid and medication can then go directly into the marrow and into the circulation. It's another way of resuscitation in severely injured patients when other IV sites aren't available. Epinephrine is a standard cardiopulmonary resuscitative drug that increases the heart rate and increases the blood pressure. By increasing the tone of the arteries. It constricts them and increases the tone of the heart. It allows the heart to squeeze more, and that's typically given in a round of CPR. But despite all of that, the patient remained in PEA, which stands for pulseless electrical activity. So the monitors that they place can record a rhythm and heart activity electrically, but the heart is not pumping enough to allow for a pulse to be found. So that's called PEA, pulseless electrical activity. So a discussion was carried out here whether it would be better to transport Eric by air or by ambulance to the hospital. And it was ultimately decided by the flight crew that they would proceed to Southern Hills Hospital, wait there, and if there was a return of pulse there, that they would take the next step by flight.
Okay, thank you, doctor. I want to jump to the Mercy Air Services. Let's go to exhibit 3 dash 003. Now, was he taken to Southern Hills by ambulance or
Yeah.
by air transport?
I believe it was by ambulance.
Okay, and was Mercy there waiting for him at Southern Hills?
They were.
Okay, take us through what happens at Southern Hills when he gets there.
So I don't know exactly what happens because I was never provided those medical records to review. However, in my review of other records and documentation, while at Southern Hills Hospital, Eric underwent further resuscitation and received 8 units of packed red blood cells during the resuscitation. He was also put on a mannitol drip. Mannitol is a medication that's given to decrease intracranial pressure. It's an osmotic medication, and it's typically given in patients with severe head injuries. Norepinephrine is another drug that's given for cardiopulmonary resuscitation and to increase or maintain a blood pressure and a heart rate.
Do you have an understanding as to why you there were no Southern Hills records?
My understanding was from what your office relayed to me, they could not be obtained because the patient Eric was brought in as a John Doe, and they couldn't find the records.
Understood.
So I'm sorry. And in addition, there was evidence of thoracic injury. And in order to treat that, chest tubes were placed bilaterally, one in the right chest, one in the left chest. They were 32 French in diameter, which is about the diameter of my finger. A little incision is made about here, and a tube is inserted between the ribs into the thoracic cavity to suction fluid and air out and to allow the lungs to re-expand. And that was what my understanding of the treatment at Southern Hills Hospital.
Okay. If we can go over to, there's more from the Mercy Air records. If we can go to 3-006 and keep going and explain what's happening here. If we can focus in on that part, please, Joe. Thank you, sir.
So stabilization did occur at the hospital, and the heart rhythm at this point had returned and was now noted to be idioventricular. Idioventricular is a rhythm that's generated by the patient's ventricles. Normal rhythm is generated in the atria, the upper chamber of the heart, through a node called the atrioventricular node, and that's a normal rhythm. When that is disrupted, the ventricles have a primary rhythm. It's usually less than 50, where the heart will contract. And it's accelerated here because he's being given epinephrine and norepinephrine to artificially increase the heart rate. But that's what idioventricular means. There's a disruption of the normal conducting electrical activity of the heart. He had also by now been intubated. There was a tube into the trachea, and EtCO2 means there was return of CO2 from the endotracheal tube. And CO2 is necessary because the lungs take in oxygen but exhale CO2, and that means the tube is in a correct position. Additional notes are that he remained on norepinephrine drip, which was to support blood pressure and heart rate, and was actively continuing to receive the 7th and 8th unit of blood.
Thank you. Can we go down to the bottom of 3-006? Yeah, that bottom. Can you tell us what's going on here?
So the endotracheal tube was placed to a mobile ventilator, and the filter they're describing was not a standard filter, but likely due to the time we were in at that time with COVID.
Why is he placed on a ventilator? Can you just
He's
say-
not breathing.
Okay,
So they had the tube down, and he's not breathing on his own. And so this is a life-saving measure, to breathe for him and keep his body and organs oxygenated.
now does he still have a pulse at this point?
He does here have still accelerated idioventricular rhythm, which it means he did have, that rhythm and a pulse at this point. The ventilator settings, I could go through them, but suffice it to say that, he was given, positive pressure to force air in the lungs, and positive, and the PEEP stands for positive end expiratory pressure, to keep the lungs expanded. You didn't allow it to get back down to 0, which is normal when, somebody's breathing on their own. So they kept it at 10 to allow the lungs to remain expanded.
Now, is that the time on the left, there, doctor?
Yes, 17, 18 or 28.
So it'd be, 5. Looks like
4.
18 to me. Oh, so,
Oh, you're right, 5,
5.
I think it's 28, but I
Okay.
can't tell.
And if we can keep going to the next page, Joe, if we go to 3-007.
And that time, he did have a blood pressure, 66/44 was what was recorded.
Okay, so he's still alive.
He is.
Okay, and if we go to 3-007 and go to the second note down that starts all vital signs improving. Do you see that there, doctor? All vital signs improving?
Yes.
Does that mean he's actually getting a little better?
So yes, so he had lost a significant amount of blood. 8 units is a lot of blood. It's probably it's over 2 liters of blood loss based on my quick calculations. So that's a lot. That's almost half, 40% of somebody's blood volume. And so by replacing that and by giving epinephrine and norepinephrine, to increase the heart rate, the heart pumping capacity, and the blood pressure, this is how he was, and with the artificial respirations, this is what was keeping him alive.
Great. Can we go to the next note down, Joe? Do you see there where it says blanket placed on patient to prevent hypothermia?
Yes.
Why would he need a blanket to prevent hypothermia?
So patients who are traumatically injured to this severity lose their ability to thermoregulate. They can't maintain their temperature. A low temperature leads to a coagulopathy, an increased tendency to bleed, which is already present because of the blood loss. You consume all of the products in your body that help prevent bleeding, but when they're used up, that's a problem. Cold patients have more problems with bleeding, so it's critical to try to keep patients warm.
Thank you, doctor. Can we go to the next note down, Joe, please? What's happening now, doctor?
So here, the endotracheal tube down into the trachea is still in place, bilateral breath sounds. So the lungs are expanded with the chest tubes, and negative epigastric sounds. That you have epigastric sounds in the stomach. That's what that means if you've intubated the esophagus. So they're just confirming adequate placement of the endotracheal tube. The heart rhythm continued to be idioventricular. They went back through the ventilator settings, were adjusted upward. More pressure was needed to continue to give oxygen to him.
Does that mean he still had a pulse here?
Scroll up just a little bit. Yes, he did. He remained unresponsive at this time. And the chest tubes were confirmed to be patent and working.
Okay, and can we go down to the next note? I think it says 1739, that one, yeah. What's going on now? They're sending an alert to Southern Hills or to Sunrise?
Yes,
Why were they doing it?
to notify them that they're flying him in and to be prepared to accept him.
Thank you. And can we go to the next note down, Joe? What's happening here?
So it looks like 1739. The pulse is lost, so there's no longer, you don't see blood pressure reading at the top, the pulse is gone. Idioventricular rhythm was continued, but PEA, because the pulse was lost, pulseless electrical activity. So they restarted cardiopulmonary resuscitation. And when that happens, you take patients off a ventilator and you use a bag valve. So the endotracheal tube is hooked up to a bag valve, and a human being is actually forcing air at a controlled rate into the lungs.
Okay. Anything else important on this note, Doctor?
No.
Okay, let's jump to 3-008, please, Joe. Or the one that starts Sunrise Trauma Team. What happens now?
So they've arrived at Sunrise Hospital, and the trauma team was waiting for them on the helipad, and they assisted the medical crew, continued CPR with additional epinephrine, but his status remained unchanged.
Okay.
He had no pulse at that time.
Can we go to the last note on that page, Joe, please? What's happening here?
So the trauma team was assembled in the trauma room, and they assessed Eric at that time. And it looked like during this time, one of the IVs in the right hand was inadvertently pulled out. The norepinephrine drip was discontinued. CPR continued at that time. Adequate ventilation was being achieved with the bag valve. And that's really it for there.
Was the Mercy Air Services, with the treatment provided by Mercy Air Services and the transport, was that all reasonably necessary as a result of the subject motor vehicle collision?
Yes, it was.
Okay, I want to just go over the bill real quick. Can we go to page 3-001, please, Joe? Was the amount charged for the Mercy Air Services, is that reasonable and customary for the Las Vegas Valley?
It's certainly standard, yes.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to Sunrise Hospital, Exhibit 4, please. If we can go to 4-023. This comes from Sunrise, and it's the most thorough note I could find in the Sunrise records. I know it's handwritten, but if you could take us through what's happening here at Sunrise, please.
So at 5:52, Eric arrived in full cardiac arrest. They were still performing CPR. The history was obtained, and crepitus was noted throughout the chest and neck. Crepitus is a crackling or crunching when you push on the skin, and it's because air from his injuries was around the neck and the chest, probably from the broken ribs that I know were there, and from a lung injury. So when you have crepitus, it's a crackling and it feels like a sponge when you palpate the skin and subcutaneous tissue. Ecchymosis is the bruising and swelling in the scapulae. That's the shoulder blades in the back, and in the bilaterally, they noted the 8 units of blood that had been given, and the fact that Eric lost his pulses during transport and arrived with CPR. Dr. Rivera was the physician in charge of everything, and it looks like 3 rounds of CPR were given with additional epinephrine, additional sodium bicarbonate, calcium, all of the things that we normally do during that code, but he remained in a PEA, pulseless electrical activity. Until 1801, they did a FAST study. A FAST is an ultrasound that you can use in an emergency department. When they looked at the heart wasn't moving at all. And that, along with the pulseless electrical activity, was inconsistent with the ability, well, it was consistent with death. And at 1801, 6:01 p.m., Eric was declared dead.
Thank you, doctor. And I just want to jump to 4-017, 4017, please, Joe. Now, this looks like it's a typewritten note. Anything important here, doctor?
They detailed that 12 minutes of CPR had preceded his arrival at sunrise, and that he arrived in a pulseless arrest. It confirms the 3 cycles of CPR, but without ROSC, return of spontaneous circulation. No cardiac wall motion was seen when they did the ultrasound, and the time of death was called at 6:01.
Okay, and if we can jump to 4-030, please. We can pull up the top area under altered mental status, hemodynamically instability. Yeah. Take us through what's going on, what they're documenting here, doctor.
So their diagnoses are a motor vehicle crash with a T-bone type of impact in 60-minute extrication time. Altered mental status was due to a severe brain injury, consistent with the GCS3T. The T added on the end of that means an intubated patient. Hemodynamic instability means that he required support for his blood pressure, and multi-system trauma, multiple organ trauma was documented.
And was the treatment at Sunrise Hospital reasonably necessary as a result of the subject motor vehicle collision?
It was.
And if we can jump to the build at 4-003, please, Joe. Just pull up the total charges. And was the billing reasonable and customary for those services rendered for the Las Vegas community?
It was.
Okay. And I want to go to the death certificate now, doctor. Can we go to Exhibit 5, please? You can go to the cause of death at the bottom, Joe. First of all, is this Mr. Echevarria's death certificate?
Yes.
Okay. And can you pull up the cause of death there, Joe? What does multiple blunt force injuries mean, doctor?
So blunt trauma is a force that's not related to a penetrating trauma. That is a gunshot or a stab wound or a cut, a glass, a shard, something like that. So multiple blunt force injuries, very non-specific, but multiple different areas of injury due to the impact and forces from the motor vehicle crash were the cause of death based on this death certificate.
Were the multiple blunt force injuries the cause of Mr. Echevarria's death?
They were.
And was the car crash the cause of the multiple blunt force injuries?
It was.
And so was the car crash the cause of his death?
It was.
Thank you. Did you review the coroner's report?
I did.
Okay. We could pull up Exhibit 36, page 4, please, Joe. 36-004. Oh, sorry. Did you review the coroner's report, Dr.
did.
Hirschfeld? Was the coroner's report for Mr. Echevarria?
It was.
Okay, and Is it relevant to his death and his injuries from this car crash?
Yes, deaths that occur in this manner are referred to the coroner's office. And it's up to the coroner, but usually a coroner investigative team is sent out, and then the coroner issues a report thereafter.
And have you reviewed coroner's reports in your career?
Yes.
Okay. At this time, Your Honor, we seek to admit Exhibit 36.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor, actually, may we approach?
Yeah, come on.